Hey guys, Modsy here, and today I thought I would do the second part to my retro collection series. Take a look at basically some of the new cards I've picked up over the last couple of months and take you through the collection in a little bit more detail. Just to note, the very first video that I did on my retro collection a couple of months ago was a very basic video because I've been posting around a lot of popular forums looking for some of the cards I wanted for my collection. And some of the people basically asked me, can you do a video on your collection and talk about it? And then it started to pick up with popularity on some of my private social media side of things. And so I thought, why not do it as a bit of a hobby? I've got all this stuff here, so yeah. So let's get into it and have a look at some of the new cards I've picked up. Alright guys, so to start with, the one of the first cards I got pretty much within days of actually finishing off that other video is the red card in the middle there. That's the that one there. It's the Geforce 2 Ti that I got from a place overseas. Sadly, there's some issues with that card, and it crashes sometimes in some games, and it seems to be some kind of a memory issue with the card itself. So sadly, the card is having some issues, so I'm not sort of running it other than doing a few benchmarks just to get performance levels and things like that. I'm not actually running it in a retro collection, and I might end up replacing it down the line if I find one in just as good a condition, basically, but actually without the issue. So one of the other cards I picked up is the little tiny one in the middle there. That's actually a Geforce 4. It's a Geforce 4 MX440, and it's actually the 8x AGP version rather than just the 4x, and I picked that one up to do a comparison with the 4X MX440 that I've got here. So I can basically just do a comparison to see whether the difference between 4X and 8X AGP speeds actually make a difference, really. So yeah. So one of the other cards that picked up that arrived along the way as well is the 9800 Pro that you see here on the end. I have got the Arctic cooling silencer on it at the moment because it's one of the cards that I'm actually using the most in my retro systems to do a lot of testing and gaming with, as it is one of the more powerful AGP cards that I've got, and it's just a really cool card to use in general. So that one arrived. That one came from a very helpful fan on Linus Tech Tips, so I have to say a very big thank you for sending that over, and he actually sent another card as well, which I'll show you a little bit later in the video as well. So yeah, that one came, it was in very good condition apart from just being a little bit dusty. The card is in, it's working really well. The capacitors are all in good condition, which is always an issue with the ATI cards of this era. They always had blowing capacitors, so you have to be careful of that. Now, I was originally looking for a 9700 Pro, and I kind of still am, if I can manage to find one that's in good conditions without any issues or anything at all. I might pick one up for a good price, but the 9800 Pro being the faster card anyway, it's one of the ones that's actually being used quite a lot in my AMD XP, Athlon XP retro system. So it's a really good card, especially with that Arctic cooler on it. It is really cool, overclocks really nicely as well, so a very good card if you're looking for a nice ATI card for a retro build. And the other AGP card that did actually arrive, that you can see on the end there, the green one, is the Geforce 3 Ti 500. This one came in basically brand new condition, having come out of a workstation system that was never actually used. The system was built by or bought by a company that basically went under before they even got started, and their warehouse, basically, the owner, stockpiled their systems thinking one day he will start it, didn't get around to it, and then he basically parted out all the systems that he had bought because he couldn't get rid of them in bulk. So yeah, managed to pick one of those cards up, very cheap and in brand new condition. Very hard to find one of those, so very good card. So one of the other cards that has arrived along the way as well, last month we have it's an Asus model, but it is still the reference card basically underneath the sticker, reference cooler and things like that. It's a ATI Radeon HD 3870. It is the 512 meg version that is crossfire compatible, which is really nice. And I'm actually a huge fan of Company of Heroes, so this was actually, while I was originally looking for a reference one, the reference ones just have a plain, the plain red fan housing. This one has a really nice Company of Heroes decal on it, and the decal did also have a it still had the protective plastic on it, so the owner basically never even took the protective plastic off, so it was in very good condition. and the card was very clean as well, actually. I haven't done too much testing with the card just yet because I've been still mucking around with a lot more AGP based systems at the moment. So when I get in to do a little bit more testing with the PCI Express cards, that's going to be one of the first ones that I jump onto. But I do know I have to replace the thermal pads on the memory on it because some of the thermal pads were starting to get a little bit old and they were leaking a little bit of oil. So I wanted to just replace them with some more modern ones. So at least it's not so yucky, basically. So yeah. Now, one of the other cards that I wanted to grab for the collection as well, which I have done a video that has actually featured in a video since my first retro collection video at least, is my Geforce 7950 GX2. This is one of my all-time favourite cards from the era. It is the fastest card ever made in the 7000 series range from back in the day. It is basically two sandwiched together 7950 GTs, basically running in SLI mode. And as you see here, there is an SLI finger here, which means you can actually have two of these cards running in quad SLI for the first time ever. It's one of it was Nvidia's basically their first ever quad SLI system setup. Albeit the cards weren't very well optimized for it, so you basically only got like between 10 and 15% extra performance by adding another one of these cards on top of this one already. But these things compared to, for example, two 6800 Ultras equal one 7950 GT. Two 7950 GTs equal roughly almost the performance of my 8800 GTS 640 meg. So that's how powerful this card is. Now, sadly, this card is having some power issues. One of the capacitors seems to be having an issue, and so I've stopped using it for the moment, and I've actually got another one of these on the way. The seller that was actually selling this had a couple of them, and I said, look, I'm having some issues with this one. Do you mind doing me a good deal on one of the other ones? And he's got an EVGA one that's on its way as well that I got really cheap because I want to actually use this card quite a lot in one of my retro builds. So yeah. And now that user that actually sent me the 9800 Pro also happened to have this really nice GTX 460, which is the exact model that I wanted. So this is the superclocked version of the GTX 460, but it's the 1 gig model with the external exhaust cooler. Now, back in the day, I had the flower cooler version that had I'll put an image up on screen. But I had the version of the GTX 460 that wasn't the blower version, that basically had the flower cooler in the middle. And I had two of them in SLI, and those things were an absolute beast. Now, I mentioned to you earlier about my 680 here. Now, I have two of these. These are the Lead Tech branded 6800 Ultras. These are the more rarer 512 meg. Sorry, it's out of focus. So these are the rarer 512 meg model cards that I've got because they run best in Crossfire, which is really nice. And I've actually got my other 6800 range of cards here because I'm actually doing, sorry for the moment, I just want to make sure it's zoomed in focus. I'm actually doing putting together the works, like an idea of water cooling retro video cards sort of video. So I've actually got water blocks here that covers the RAM and the core as well. So these are both SwiftTech. These are both SwiftTech branded water blocks here. And they were originally what I bought for the AGP 6800 Ultra, which I'll put a couple of videos up on screen. When I was doing my initial just single retro build, basically, my ultimate retro build, because I wanted to do full water cooling, that's what I bought for the AGP card. But they do also fit on the 6800 GT and also the PCI Express version of the 6800 as well. Even though this card does have memory chips on the back, whereas, for instance, the 256 model does not. Yeah, but that's okay because the memory chips don't get that hot anyway, so it's not too bad. Oh, and another really cool thing about the water blocks that I've got here as well is Nvidia did a really smart thing, and the 6800 range and the 7800 range and 7900 range of cards all have the exact same memory layout and core, like the distance between the heatsink mounts. So this distance here, basically. So you can actually fit a lot of water blocks and a lot of aftermarket coolers that fit the 6800 Ultra, for example, or any of the 6800 cards like the GT, and you could actually use, like for instance, the blocks here. They actually also fit on my 7800 GTX. They'll also fit on my, I've got another 7950 GT coming. They'll also fit on that as well, and they'll also fit on the 7900 GTX, the bigger version, basically the next version up from that as well. So it's rather cool if you want to get water cooling. These blocks, you can actually get these still. This is a more modern graphics card water block that you can actually still buy, and these are a little bit harder to find. These memory blocks from SwiftTech, but you can still find them if you're lucky. But you do have to plan your build around them because they do have non-removable barbs here that you have to have the right size tubing for. So you have to basically plan your build around using one of these memory blocks, and I do recommend you use one for one of these cards as well. So that's a look at the collection, how it's going so far. So there's been a few additions to the collection, so I'll do a part 3 video probably in the next couple of months, probably closer towards the end of the year, maybe around end of October, early November. I might have a couple more cards added to the collection by then. Thanks for watching, guys, and if you do have any questions about any specific cards or you're wanting to build a retro system at all, and you're looking at information about different cards and what to get and bits and pieces, feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to get back to you and let you know of suggestions and where to buy specific cards. Or if you have any questions about some of the other cards that I've got here, for example, feel free to ask. Thanks for watching, guys, and catch you on the next one.